Good morning and welcome to The Connection on KUBE 93. I'm your host, DJ Supa. This morning, we have a special guest in the studio joining us from the Hope Heart Institute. He is Mr. Mark Noodleman, President and CEO. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Supa.
Thank you for being in here this morning. Now, for people that don't know, what exactly is the Hope Heart Institute? The history of it, up until its current state, the kind of mission of the Hope Heart Institute?
Sure. The Hope Heart Institute has been around in Seattle. Actually, it was founded here in 1959. So it's been around for 53 years, primarily in research and education. So for the first 45 years, we were a research institute located up on Cherry Hill over by Garfield High School. And if you think of bypass graft surgery, you probably heard of people having a quadruple bypass. That was all pioneered here in Seattle. So Seattle really is a heart town, and it goes way back to the 60s and 70s when our founder, Dr. Lester Savage, who was a cardiac surgeon, performed surgeries on people who were going to pass away anyway. And so he would try something, and he developed this pioneered bypass graft surgery where he would take and bypass the clots in people's hearts. So we've kind of reinvented ourselves over the last 5 to 10 years in that we do a lot of education and outreach, education in the schools, community outreach, reaching out to populations that don't necessarily seek out information about heart disease. Sometimes people forget that it's the #1 killer of all women and men in the United States, and actually has surpassed all diseases in the world now.
Now, can you break it down for us? Can you put it in some kind of quantitative numerical measure that can help us understand how big is heart disease in the U.S.?
Well, heart disease kills more people in the United States than all cancers combined. It's the #1 killer. So when you think about heart disease, you got to include the diabetics. 75% of all diabetics die of heart disease. Stroke is just a heart attack in the brain. So heart attack, heart disease, #1 killer of men and women. Stroke, number 3 cause of death, and #1 cause of disability.
Now, Mark, I hate to ask you this question because me being a man myself, but isn't it mostly men that have heart attacks?
It's actually not. Most people think of, they see on TV that the man clutching his chest with an elephant on his chest and shooting arm pain. It's actually not what heart attack signs are. You could experience nausea, jaw pain, back pain, and sometimes it can come on, and especially for women, can come on with very different symptoms. It can feel like you have the flu, and some people, and that's why they're reluctant to go to the emergency room. But women know their own bodies, and it's important to listen to that. And if you're just not feeling right, head in and talk to your doctor. And like I said, it's the #1 killer, and it's primarily because people don't seek out the information and they don't seek out care.
I'm glad you clarified that up for us. We are talking this morning on The Connection with the President and CEO of the Hope Heart Institute, Mr. Mark Noodleman. Now, get into, and I know you briefly got into, but what are the signs, since it's not the guy clutching, himself, what are the signs that you're having a heart attack or experiencing, sudden cardiac arrest?
Well, sudden cardiac arrest, that's the electrical side of the heart. So if you think of a house, you have plumbing and you have electrical, right? A heart is the same way. You have plumbing, which is the arteries, and you don't want to have your arteries clogged by eating bad foods, and it's called atherosclerosis, or hardening of the arteries. That's where you have plaque might break off and head into your heart, and that scar tissue is not going to go away. And so people end up dying right away, or they take a pill, or they have a stent, or they have surgery, and then they're okay until their heart begins to failure. And you might hear the words congestive heart failure or heart failure, which means your blood isn't able to pump through the heart because the heart is weakened, and that's how people pass away from heart disease. You did ask about symptoms, and it really is. A lot of the times it is the crushing pain and the pain down the left arm, but you have to recognize that there are other ones, and jaw pain, back pain, lower back. They all take. You have to really be aware of your body.
Now, talk to us, Mark. Are there any warning signs before all of that stuff starts to happen, like before having the heart attack?
Well, again, family history, so genetics and your age, they play a huge factor in that. So as long as you can start living a healthy life, healthier. We don't use the word healthy. We like to use healthier because we don't want to take, I don't want to say the fun out of life, but if somebody wants to have a donut, have a donut. Just don't have 9 donuts, Super Sam.
No, I wanted all 9 this morning.
You want to have a Coke? Have a Coke. Just don't have the 64 ounce. So small changes, and that's what we advocate at the Hope Heart Institute.
Again, you're listening to Mr. Mark Noodleman. He is the president and CEO of the Hope Heart Institute this morning on The Connection on KUBE 93. Now, again, why is heart disease so prevalent?
Well, in our society, you've obviously heard about childhood obesity, and that's a huge issue. Is that we become more sedentary? We're playing in front of our Xbox or our Wii. We're a lot of screen time. We're not getting out in our communities and playing. Sometimes we're taking the bus 1 mile instead of walking to school because there aren't good sidewalks for our kids to walk on. It's hard to get fruits and vegetables. You can go to the store and spend $20 and get a lot of junk food and not very much healthy food. And so just small changes. We're not trying to take the vending machines out of the schools. Like some groups really advocate that. We're saying, no, let's educate kids. Let's give them the information so they can begin to make critical choices in their life. And we want them to eventually say, I don't want that vending machine in my school. I only want healthier options.
Now, Mark, let me be honest with you. Here on KUBE 93, there's a lot of young people that are obviously listening right now. And you had mentioned, you had brought up some age issues. And maybe it's a misconception, but we think that a heart disease is something I may not have to worry about for a while. So talk to us about when should people really start to focus on heart health? And then since you did bring up kids, can young kids indeed have a heart attack?
Well, it's tough for them to have a heart attack, but there are many issues around sudden cardiac arrest. You might hear stories on the news about people just dropping on the football field or the basketball court, just dropping dead. And that's sudden cardiac arrest. That's where there's an actual electrical problem in their heart, where their heart starts to quiver so much that they're racing at 200, 250 beats per minute. And most people die from that immediately because they can't get help. Well, there are a lot of changes in society now. People know CPR, so it's important for people to know what to do when somebody drops. You got to get 911 on the phone, and they'll get there within minutes. But CPR and a lot of places, schools now have AEDs, automatic external defibrillators. And for people to have access to those, whether it's in public places, schools, movie theaters, what have you, there's a lot that can be done to save people when they have sudden cardiac arrest. As for heart attack, that's going to happen a little later in life, but we're seeing that earlier and earlier because, again, kids, a little unhealthier. There's anecdotal evidence that, or what we hear is that this will be the first generation that has their lifespan will be lower than their parents, which is it's just fascinating. It's so much easier to make changes in your habits when you're young. Studies show that if a 40-year-old man has a heart event, there's a 50% chance that he's going to make a change in his lifestyle that's going to impact him positively. If you can get to a third grader and start educating them about heart disease and eating healthy and reading nutrition labels and getting out and getting exercise, there's a 90% chance that is going to impact them and they're going to make changes. So we have programs at the Hope that focus on kids. And you might say that we're trying to run upstream. We're trying to get to the kids when they're in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades, and again later when they're in 7th and 8th grade in middle school through our Youth Take Heart program, and again when they're in high school through our Teen Take Heart program. So we're reiterating the point every 3 or 4 years in school that they can make a difference and they can stop that plaque growing in their heart and their arteries now. Start leading a healthy life now. And what we're finding, Supa Sam, is that those kids in 3rd grade are taking that information home to their families. Now, I don't know if you have kids, but I do. And when my kid comes home and says, I want broccoli for dinner, after I get up from passing out on the floor, we're probably going to eat healthier that night. So kids do have, it's not necessarily the moms that are leading the way. It's the kids. They're taking their families out for walks, and they want to walk the dog, and they want to get out and be active.
I'm glad you brought up education. That is definitely a great point. Talking again this morning on A Connection with Mr. Mark Noodleman. He is the president and CEO of the Hope Heart Institute. Now, Mark, along those same lines, with increased education and changing your habits, what do you think about, is there a disparity amongst economic concerns? It costs money to, quote unquote, eat healthy.
It does. You can go and eat at McDonald's for pretty cheap, and we're not saying don't eat at McDonald's. We're just saying maybe don't eat there every day. Eat once a week. Enjoy life. I enjoy McDonald's, and you can probably tell that sitting across from me, but there's moderation, and that's what we espouse. So when we're going into the schools and we're teaching kids about moderation and healthier lifestyle, again, healthier, we'll know we've made a difference when in a few years you go into a movie theater and you can have a vegetable platter instead of nachos. So we're a ways off.
Now, we talked about economic concerns and we talked about, other types of concerns. Are there, certain ethnicities that are more at risk?
Actually,
you had mentioned family history earlier.
African-American populations, Native American populations, Hispanic populations, astronomically more at risk, Supa Sam. And we spend a lot of time in communities around the city that, again, don't necessarily seek out information about this. Socioeconomically disadvantaged, you can say lower income, lower economic income populations. it's not on the radar screen. They may not get to see the doctor all the time. So that's why we're out in the community, at festivals. We're at the Bite of Seattle. We're at the Taste of Tacoma. And people say, why are you at these events? And it's like, well, where else should we be? We need to be talking to people who haven't had their blood pressure done. And we need, we find people that come in with the elevated blood pressure and they say, well, I had blood pressure medication, but I feel fine now, so I'm not going to take it. And it's like, no, go see your doctor. I'm not a physician, but when somebody shows up with very, very high blood pressure, we have to advise them, hey, go see your doctor. And if they don't have a doctor, here's a list of free clinics and opportunities for them to get and be seen by professionals so they can get the advice and the help they need.
So there may be some people listening right now that said, hey, I wasn't really thinking about my heart, but he's really dropping some knowledge on me. And, I'm definitely concerned about it. And maybe they want to know where you guys are going to be, some upcoming events in the near future. So we're going to get into all of that stuff and more from Mark Nudelman, the Hope Heart Institute president and CEO, right after this quick commercial break. The Connection on KUBE 93. Welcome back to The Connection on KUBE 93. I'm your host, DJ Supa. This morning we are speaking with the Hope Heart Institute. We have the president and CEO, Mr. Mark Nudelman. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Supa Sam, for having me.
Now, a typical day for, the president and CEO for the Hope Heart Institute. Well, first, for people that are just joining us, again, kind of your mission, your history, and then that typical day for the president and CEO.
Well, a lot of our activity revolves around outreach into the community. So we're out there. We're across Puget Sound. We're across the state. We're in Blaine. We're in Vancouver, Washington. We're in Tacoma. We're in Everett. We're all over Seattle. We're in Delridge, White Center, West Seattle, South Park. We're doing a lot of things in South Park right now that are pretty cool.
The Hope Heart Institute is
research and education. So if you have a heart attack, you need the latest and greatest, and that's what we want in America. We have exceptional health care for those that have access to it, and we want to make sure that people have access to the latest stents, the latest surgeries, the latest devices and drug therapies. And so we participate with groups across the country at Harvard, Cleveland Clinic, Mayo, Duke, all these very large universities that put together clinical trials and research that moves medicine forward. So society, in American society, basic science, the things that proteins and molecules and proteoglycans and all that science that I don't even, I'm not a scientist, but that's the cool stuff in the labs that people are playing around with, trying to develop things that are going to impact us 20 and 30 years from now. And so we have those in partnership with the Ben and Roy Research Institute. We have the Hope Heart program there. And so the basic scientists are doing some pretty impressive things that are going to be 20 or 30 years. But we also have to worry about, what's going to happen tomorrow if I go into the emergency room. And right now we're working on things that'll blow your mind, that are available now, whether it's lowering your cholesterol, lowering your bad cholesterol, and raising your good cholesterol. I know it gets confusing with all these cholesterol numbers, but it's important that people know their numbers, and we're here to help them in our outreach and education.
Now, you had mentioned that, you're not a scientist, and we were talking off the air about, you're not a doctor either. And a lot of people sometimes get that confused because, they might want you to give them some doctoral advice when it's not really about that. It's more about the education.
Right. We have 13 cardiologists on our staff that do research, and then there are about 30 basic scientists over at the Ben and Roy Research that do great work in basic science. And they're the PhDs. They're the scientists that really get down and dirty into the proteins and cellular level. What I do as the president and CEO is I administer the hope and make sure that we're fundraising properly, that our science is where it's ethical and where it needs to be, and expanding our outreach and education programs across the state and really across the country now. We've become nationally recognized with our Kids Take Heart program, which is the elementary school program, and with our Youth Take Heart program, which is the middle school program, which is in all Seattle middle schools.
Now, we had talked about it in the first part of the show, but break it down for the KUBE 93 listener, that teenager, that 20s, 30s. What can people in the 20s and 30s do to prevent heart disease?
Well, when I was a teenager in my 20s, this was a long time ago, Supa Sam, I was invincible, and nothing was going to get in my way. But you have to start thinking, okay, my grandmother had this. We were just talking offline, and you were talking about how heart disease has impacted your family, and it certainly impacted mine. My grandmother passed away from heart disease, and my father actually had a heart attack while giving a speech to Rotary 15 years ago. And he went in the back, proud to say he finished the speech, went in the back and dropped down and ended up with a quadruple bypass. And I've been passionate about heart disease and the Hope ever since. So I've been with the Hope for 10 years, 5 years as its CEO.
Again, Mark Nudelman. You know, by now I'm pretty sure people have seen all the ads regarding smoking, heart disease, the connection. Does it really affect it?
Yeah, I mean, it's incontrovertible fact. I mean, it is what it is. If you're still smoking, we tell people, really, you're still smoking? You know it's bad for you. We actually have buttons that say your butt stinks, and some people don't get that, and some people don't like that. But it's true. I mean, there's nothing positive that comes out of smoking, and if you want to put it in economic terms, why don't you just write a check every month for $200 to the tobacco industry? So for $2,400 a year, that's one pack a day. If you're smoking one pack a day, you're spending $2,400 a year. Now, you can go to Hawaii. You can go buy put a down payment on a new car.
You can give it to me.
You can give it to Supa Sam. But that's a lot of money. So just in economic terms, that's money that you could be spending on healthy foods for your family. You know, it's choices people make, and we all know that that's probably not the best choice. It contributes to, obviously, to cancer, but a huge impact on with other diseases too. Heart disease, a huge impact from smoking. So you really, we look at people and go, really? You still smoking?
Now, it is about choices, and I'm glad that you brought up that word, and it is about education, and it is about programs, and I know you guys offer plenty of them. What programs does the Hope for Heart Institute offer?
We talked briefly about Kids Take Heart, which is an elementary school program that focuses on the anatomy of the heart, fitness, nutrition, and we focus on self-esteem and goal setting because we think those are the beginnings of stress. It's a pretty stressful world we live in, and if you can start at an early age to start and help to relieve some of that stress by learning to take the good things that people say and taking them in and kind of throwing away the bad things and working on self-esteem, working on making SMART goals that are specific and measurable and achievable, and these are important skills. And we actually get approached by folks that are gang prevention units or drug and alcohol because these self-esteem and goal-setting units are pretty powerful, and they run across lines that run into other areas other than the heart disease. Another program is Youth Take Heart. It's in, as I said, all the Seattle middle schools, and it's across the region, actually. It's down in New Mexico. It's in Alaska. It's in Louisiana. It's a pretty great program, and it talks about the same things at a higher level. This is in the 7th and 8th grade science classes. Anatomy of the heart, what happens to a diseased heart, the impact of fitness and nutrition on the heart, and it also talks about bioengineering. So if you have a heart attack and your heart is damaged, it's scar tissue, and it doesn't grow back. It's not like some of the other cells in the body that will regenerate. And so what would you do as a scientist in 8th grade to try and repair the heart? And actually, in the science experiments, they figure out that duct tape is the way to go.
Duct tape fixes everything.
Fixes everything, Supa Sam. And, we just keep going with these Take Heart programs. Teen Take Heart is a high school program that's under development with the College of Nursing at Seattle University. It talks about, again, the diseased heart. What does it look like? How do you avoid it? And what's really interesting is, all anorexics or most anorexics die of heart disease. And so, that's pretty powerful. When you're in middle or high school, everybody knows somebody with an eating disorder, and you need to intervene and talk to these people because that's what's going to kill them is heart disease. Cocaine overdoses, alcohol, nicotine, all these things impact. And so these kids in the high school biology classes, they're learning this is what your heart does on cocaine. This is what your heart does on alcohol and all the impacts and they can see that. We don't bring cocaine and alcohol into the schools, but there are things that mimic those responses. So those are the education programs that are in the schools, the curriculum.
Now, you talked about the education programs and the curriculum that you guys have in the schools. How much does it cost the schools to actually, indeed use your programs?
We actually don't charge for that. It's a free program. We rely on donations from the public and corporate partners, grants, people that are passionate about heart disease support these programs, and they want us out in the community doing these things. And so we're able to offer them the elementary, middle, and high school level at no charge. So if you're a teacher out there and you're listening this morning, maybe on your way to church on Sunday morning, give us a jingle or send us an email, and we'll help get this program into your schools. And if you're a parent, same thing. Work with your PTA. We'll come into the schools. We'll do whatever we can. We'll reach out to every community.
Now, I was just going to ask, but I think you answered the question. I was going to say, do you have people that will come to your schools and speak in athletic programs, et cetera, et cetera? I'm sure you guys are already doing all that.
Right. One of the newer programs we have is it's called Athletes Take Heart. You see where we're going here with the pattern of Take Heart, Supa Sam?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Athletes Take Heart addresses the electrical side of the heart that we talked about earlier. It's the sudden cardiac arrest. And how do we screen kids when they go out for sports in the fall or spring or winter, they have to get a physical. Well, they don't always have to get an EKG, which measures their heart rhythm, and an ultrasound of their heart, which takes an actual look at the heart, that cardiologists can screen and look and see if there are some anomalies in the heart, maybe some arrhythmias, which are some different heartbeats that may need some treatment. And to prevent that kid from dropping dead on the athletic field, we want to prevent that. And that's also free. We have the coordinator of that program. Her name is Kayla Burt. You might recognize that she used to play for the University of Washington Huskies, and she had a cardiac arrest on when she was playing, and she was saved by her teammates in Medic One and came back to play some more, and then her implantable defibrillator went off in a game a couple years later, and she had to retire. Well, she now works for the Hope, developing the Athletes Take Heart program.
Mark Nudelman, President, CEO, Hope Heart Institute. You had mentioned earlier about you guys rely heavily on donations, especially with the school programs. So how can people get involved? And, if it's not a monetary thing that they can provide, what else can they do to get involved with the Hope Heart Institute?
There's so much we need from the community in terms of volunteers. We're out at events, and we need people to understand the programs and then go out and teach those programs and the outreach and the information to the public. And so we have volunteer programs that allow people to participate in that, and we'll train them, and you'll be able to go out and work as a volunteer. It's not about stuffing envelopes in our office. It's about getting out and working with people in the community. And as for raising funds, Supa Sam, I want to talk to you about, we need some of the other stations here at Clear Channel are doing. We need you to have a little radiothon and raise us $1 million so we can continue to do this all over the state of Washington.
Now, when it comes to getting in contact with you, because you did say, hey, give us a jingle, drop us a line. So, indeed, go ahead right now and give out that information, whether it be telephone numbers, websites, email addresses. How can people get in contact with the Hope Heart Institute?
Good question. It's info@hopeheart.org is our email. Hopeheart.org is HOPEHEART.org. And you go and take a look at our website, learn more about the programs, about the outreach, about the research. Send us an email. There's information there about volunteering. Info@hopeheart.org. The phone number is 425-456-8700. And ask for me. I'd love to talk with you.
This is Mark Nudelman. To spell his name right. I've said it right the whole show.
You have.
But it's
Good
not
job.
spelled how it looks.
Nope.
So, Mark, we're almost out of time here on The Connection on KUBE 93. But, I just want to leave the floor open to you to, just leave, one final thought out there. Especially, I'd like for you to touch on, if you weren't going to already, why you guys focus on, and you mentioned it in the first, segment, why you guys focus so heavily on kids when, heart disease and heart attack is more of an adult issue. I'd like for you to get into that, and then just that final thought that you would like people to remember as your message from the Hope Heart Institute.
Well, in a nutshell, because we believe that kids are going to lead the way. When I was 10 years old, my dad smoked, and I learned at school that smoking is bad for you. So I went home and I said, Dad, I don't want you to smoke anymore. And that was 35 years ago, and he hasn't had a cigarette. And yeah, he had a heart attack later, but it runs in our family. I'm at risk, and my kids are at risk, and it's scary. And the reason we focus on elementary kids and middle school kids is because they can impact the family. Like we talked about with the broccoli, or if you want to go and, people are busy. People are busy, and they just want the easiest dinner they can make. But, eat a little healthier, get a little more activity, start small. Park a little further away. If you're going to the movie, or you're at the mall, if you're at South Center or Northgate, park a little further away. Start with little things that can do it. I'm passionate about heart disease because it's impacted my family so directly. That's why I got into it. I was asking you, and Supa Sam, I put it back on you. How have you been impacted? Because everybody's got a story about heart disease in their family.
Yeah, my grandmother was just in the hospital, a couple of weeks ago, and they did some, test on her and wanted to change her, medicine and stuff. So, this directly affects me.
So, Supa Sam, you need to go get checked out and know your numbers, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, because it runs in families, and everybody's got that connection. And so we'll expect to see you at the doctor's office getting checked up.
That's Mark Nudelman, President, CEO, Hope Heart Institute. Thank you so much for all the information that you gave me and all the listeners here on The Connection on KUBE 93. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks.